What should be a slow news day for Thursday for a Thanksgiving day is already pretty hot with lots of updates for the apartment fire in Hong Kong, where the fire is still being fought and is still trying to save people in those high-rise buildings. And of course, yesterday in D.C., where two guardsmen from West Virginia, I believe, were shot. Yeah, West Virginia were shot on the street in a targeted attack. Now, we're going to talk about that in a moment. The biggest thing that's going on right now is heightened security for many things that will be going on in the public, including your turkey trots, your parades, and especially for the Macy's Thanksgiving Parade. That's a very big target, very large spectacle happening around, well, parades around the nation, but there in New York City. Now let's talk specifically about this attack, and it's becoming something that's a bit charged, if you will, by the administration. Two West Virginia National Guard members were shot and critically wounded near the White House in D.C. yesterday, what officials are calling a targeted ambush. And the suspect is a 29-year-old Ramamala Lakawa, which I butchered his name, but the big thing is he's an Afghan national, and he came to the United States in 2021, later granted asylum after arriving with the Biden-era evacuation program. This was a program to help give people who helped us in Afghanistan, helped us in the foreign wars across the seas, and bring them here to get them out of the unsafe conditions they were there, and basically patriate them to be Americans, patriate them to be in a better place. This is a person that was brought in under one of those programs under Biden, and now he has decided to literally take his shot at American soldiers, and we don't know a motive at the moment. He was also shot and taken into custody. FBI is investigating the entire case for the possibility of the act of terrorism, whether it was something that was a deeply planned state thing or just a one guy being radicalized, taking a shot at the guys. No one knows at the moment. Happening just before Thanksgiving has intensified the already heated debate over the presence of thousands of guard troops in the nation's capital and in various other places across the nation, other cities that Donald Trump has deployed them because he basically said of the fear of crime. This one not exactly a crime issue, if you will. This one obviously a targeted terrorism issue, but how deep it goes is where we'll have to see going forward. Now, statement coming from Florida as Trump headed to Mar-a-Lago for his Thanksgiving dinner. President Trump called the shooting an act of evil, an act of hatred, an act of terror. Those were his words, and used it to push for much tougher immigration steps, specifically against Afghans. He said the United States must now re-examine every single alien who entered our country from Afghanistan from Biden. This is referring to that 2021 U.S. withdrawal and everything happening to try to bring people in that were assisting us in the efforts. Trump argued that the lack of migration policies in that actual pullback is our country's biggest national security threat and blamed Biden-era vetting for allowing the suspect in the United States in the first place. Remember, he was brought into the United States 4 years ago. So this is something that's been maybe brewing for a while, or maybe something that's just a brand new spark of something else. We won't know until we get some information from the FBI as they do the actual investigating. The Trump administration is saying that they're going to pause the processing of all immigration applicants from the Afghanistan region and go through a similar issue for all vetting processes being examined going forward. Now, let's talk about the suspect specifically. He came through Operation Allies Welcome, and that's a Biden-era program that resettled roughly about 76,000 Afghans who were at risk at the fall of Kabul, many of whom who had worked with U.S. troops and diplomats. After the shooting, after yesterday, the U.S. Citizenship and Immigration Services have suspended processing any new and any pending Afghan cases, and the move has advocate groups going nuts, saying it could trap tens of thousands of people who are still waiting in Pakistan and other countries who are trying to be saved and liberated from the limbo they have been in for many, many years. Human rights organizations also warn that these Afghans face threats, arrests, and deportation in their path to the U.S. anyway, and with that path now being closed, their safety is now in jeopardy. Advocates are stressing that one violent act by an individual should not be used to point the entire group as dangerous, which is hard to do in cases like this. As we said, this one person was brought in through this program, and we don't have a reason why he took these shots at these guard members at the moment. We don't have a pure reason on whether it was a personal vendetta, whether he was actually a member of a terrorist sect that was waiting for something to happen, and this was the random time to do something. We don't actually know. Trump's comments are also deepening some long-running political fights over immigration and refugee policies just in general. Supporters of the president, including many Republican lawmakers, say that the shooting proves that the Biden Afghan airlift and resettlement program were rushed and risky, and pointing earlier watchdog reports that some evacuees appeared on terrorist watch lists. Essentially, a chance to point fingers at Biden specifically, not at the people doing the acts themselves. Two different issues, I understand, but that's where we are. The critics are including the refugees from many places, Afghanistan is particular, and other civil rights groups, saying that the warning to Trump and the warnings from Trump is that using one attack, one crime to basically stigmatize the entire community and justify sweeping crackdowns. They also note that investigators still have not fully established suspects' motive and caution against calling attacks terrorism before all facts are known. Trump's call to re-examine everyone who came from Afghanistan under Biden could mean new security checks, status reviews, or even attempts to detain or deport some evacuees. Though his administration has not actually explained the exact process, a lot of times this is how things go. Something's said, and then they figure it out later, and then we have all the legal fights. And legal experts are noting that mass reviews of specific national groups could face many court challenges, especially for people who already have asylum, already have green cards, or other legal statuses have been established. But at the same time, the U.S. still has obligations, in theory, to Afghans who risked their lives to aid American forces and were promised protection in exchange for their service. Now, European and U.S. coverage points out that the sweeping crackdown could send a strong message, not just to the Afghans who already gave of themselves, but to future partners who might hesitate to help the U.S. in conflicts if they fear being abandoned later from the safety of their own kind. Now, let's look at the positives of this, if you want to call this positives. Supporters argue that reviewing everyone who arrived from Afghanistan under Biden could actually identify any real security risks that were missed during the chaotic 2021 evacuation. This could be a good thing, a double check to make sure that some people who were slipped through the cracks can be found and reassure Americans that terrorism and violent crime will be down. You'll be able to find people who were basically just sitting in sleeper type cells waiting for the right actions, and these actions apparently are coming right now. Those supporters say government has a duty to respond when a serious attack involves someone who came through the U.S. program under false pretenses, of course, and updating the vetting rules after the fact is actually saving us from new threats emerging from reasonable responses. But on the other side, critics are warning that threatening tens of thousands of Afghans as suspects because of one person's actions is a form of collective punishment that could ruin lives, break promises of wartime allies, and fuel anti-immigrant hate. They also fear that the broad, hastily designed reviews may do little to improve safety other than saber rattling and just making a big show of things, badly damaging America's reputation as a country that keeps its word, which is what we're looking at here, to people who risk their lives to help U.S. forces. This is going to be a all weekend event in the way of talking points. We're going back and forth, especially as security forces around the nation will be upped up even more because of what happened, because of all the public displays of love and joy in Thanksgiving on today specifically, and throughout the weekend going on forward with football games and sports things right now. We have lots of things, including some playoff football happening here in the state, so lots of things to deal with. Playoff football may not be as big as the NFL game or big as the Macy's Day Parade or just troops on the streets, but there is now a seemingly shadow of security that people need to worry about. Do you worry about it? Do you think this is a bigger deal than it should be? Should the re-examining of all Afghans really be a big thing? Or this is something that's a piece by piece, one by one thing, and once you find that this one guy had one radical idea from wherever, it's not exactly a big deal, or it's a big deal, not exactly a large-scale deal, but an isolated incident that can be taken out a bit more surgically. Your thoughts, your comments. Otherwise, happy Thanksgiving.